and we'll go from there. Okay. Hey, welcome back to the latest episode of the Besties podcast. This is episode 6. This is going to be a very special episode. We're going to have guests for the first time. We're going to record over a period of days for the first time. Like we're
super excited. This is like a big deal for us.
This is a very big deal.
Yeah.
So my name is Errol. Nice to meet you. This is
I'm Tanzim.
Tanzim, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How are you doing today?
Checking in. I'm doing great. I'm actually having a really good day. I did a bunch of work around the house. I put up curtains in my second bedroom, which I've had for a year. Haven't put them up.
Weird flex, but okay.
Yeah. And also, can I just say, usually when I put things up in my house, everything is a little bit crooked. And these curtains are a little bit crooked, but they're less crooked than they normally would be because I kind of learned how to do this. So I'm excited.
What's your process?
Chaos, but somehow it worked.
Fresh.
Which is usually my process for most things. But how are you?
I am doing all right. I applied for this job. The job, I don't know if I even told you this, but the job just kind of went away. Like they didn't have dough for it. So I'm like a little bit bummed, but like, So our guest is about to join us. Tanzim is going to introduce this person. They're coming on right now.
Okay. Hey, Aixa.
Hey.
Hey, so just for everybody listening, this is our guest. Her name is Aixa Rodriguez. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Aixa.
Aixa. Okay. You see, I thought it was this. I thought your name was pronounced Aixa. And then somebody was like, no, it's Aisha. And I was like, oh, really? I'm wrong then.
People say it in many different ways. I even came out in a documentary where they mispronounced it. So.
Oh, man. Well, we don't want to do that here. So
I respond to anything approximating. And I'm very
anything
about that.
Okay, well, we want to get it right. So this is Aixa Rodriguez. You are a teacher, right, in New York City public schools?
Yes.
So you want to go ahead and, well, actually, let's do introduction. So this is my friend Errol.
Hey, how are you?
Nice.
Errol and I do this podcast together. This is like episode 6. We just started it. And the last episode that we did, we were talking about the issues around school reopenings. And so Errol lives in Providence, Rhode Island, and there's a lot of issues around school reopenings there. And I know I've heard a lot about what's happening here in New York City. So we thought, we should get educators on from Providence, from New York, from different places to talk about sort of like what exactly is going on. So we could get started. You want to tell us first, like, what you teach, what grade, like a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so my name's Aixa Rodriguez, Bronx born and raised, and now proudly living my own apartment in the Bronx. I started teaching in Japan and came right back home and have been teaching English as a second language ever since. In the DOE since 2005. So this is 15 years in of a career teaching immigrant and vulnerable populations, and mostly in the Bronx, but recently in Manhattan. I'm an educational activist. In MORE, the Movement of Rank and File Educators. I have been in BASS, the Badass Teachers Association nationally. And, I work with and I coordinate with and I plan with lots of different people who are parents, who are activists, who are professors in many different ways, from anything from testing and, abuse of children with screens, too much screen time. And what's happening right now is literally like deja vu, vujade. Like oh my God. What's happening is repeating the nightmare of March. So we knew things were happening from like the beginning of the fall, and our government failed us. By March, we had so many outbreaks, and the teachers were not being listened to. Teachers told their principals. The principals, told the DOE. The DOE refused to accept diagnoses, except that if the Department of Health verified it. So teachers who came from Montefiore Hospital with a diagnosis were being told, oh, you're self-reporting. So, people were literally creating hotspots in schools. And if you know anything about the Bronx and you know anything about certain pockets and certain neighborhoods, they start to become part of the group that predominantly lives there. So for most teachers, if you just teach, in one particular school, you may not meet all the kids in the school, but the ESL teachers are a vector. We end up teaching all of the immigrant kids from that community. So in my room, I had African kids, Dominican kids, Mexican kids, Bangladeshi kids. I mean, like, everybody's in the room. So what does that mean for someone like me as a teacher? It means that if any exchange of the Rona happens in my school, that means all those different communities would have been affected, as opposed to, I'm sorry, this is the truth, some schools are just having one population. Right. They're not as mixed. So for me, I was really afraid what was going on, because we were being given the wrong directives in March, the wrong. Right. And once we started to realize how bad it was, there was one group, Grace Dodge Educational Campus in the Bronx, that's been doing some protests and pickets every morning this week. They decided to reach out to more, and they were going to have a sick out because so many of their people were being impacted. And people were coordinating from the lower levels and talking to each other. Nothing directed by the union. It was just saving your own life. Yeah. And it caught on. We all called the substitute hotline and called out because we were not being told anything. There was no protocol. And so we shut down the schools in March. And, none of the threats from our union did anything. But when they saw that, like, no teachers were coming in, then they shut it down. It seems like the same thing is happening right now. We are receiving letters, screenshots, text messages, emails. And right now there are 10 schools who are reporting in all 5 boroughs cases.
Yeah. So some schools have already reopened. That's what's happening?
So the schools have reopened for the teachers to come in, because that was negotiated with our union, that the teachers will come in on the same day that would have been our first day. And we were supposed to prep and get training and all this la 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 la. It really is punishing teachers, forcing us to come in to sit on a computer and watch a video. Right. And clean the absolutely disgusting rooms that were full of mice droppings and everything else. They did no cleaning. Don't believe anything that was on the news about deep cleaning, because it didn't happen. All of our custodian friends that have been releasing stuff to us and telling us what's really happening, they don't have the manpower. They did not have the equipment. They did not get a budget raise. None of those things happened to allow them to do the things that they've been lying to the public, saying that it was done no deep cleaning. Toilets not cleaned. I mean, a dead fish in a tank, a dead squirrel in one room, mice, and what looked like rat droppings was way big, and people having to clean that themselves. The windows don't open more than a ching. Yeah. And they're saying that that's enough for ventilation. And we got trained by ventilation experts. The more people reached out and got trained by them, all of this is being pushed to open up the economy. Is what's happening.
Exactly. It's and what you're saying, like I already had my suspicions overall, not just in terms of school reopenings, but just in general, the way that they're saying the numbers are so low in New York. And I've already had my suspicions, because honestly, there's no way that you could be reopening restaurants and even outdoor seating and all these things happening, and the numbers are staying this low. And it really does seem to me like a push to just, like what you said, just reopen the economy. Who cares who dies, how many people we sacrifice, But Errol, do you have any questions that you wanted to jump in? Or I know you've been really active in what's going on in Providence too. So maybe you can speak on that a little bit.
It's really sad how almost identical to what's happening in Rhode Island. I wouldn't even say all of Rhode Island, the cities for sure, but definitely Providence. My friends have been sending me pictures of what their classrooms look like, and these supposed sanitary stations. It'll be like some hand sanitizer, not on the wall hand sanitizer, like a half a bottle of hand sanitizer and maybe 3 or 4 Clorox wipes. Yeah, it's not even enough for just the teachers. Never mind when students are in the building. And I don't know if in New York it's this way, but in Rhode Island, the governor and the commissioner of education announced that that schools were going to start late. So a lot of parents. So I have a 19-year-old. He's up near you guys, upstate New York, and college. So he's not in this. But like if he was, I will be losing my mind even more. But like all my teacher friends, all my parent friends, are feeling good because the governor said that school was starting late. Little do they know, it's not really a late start; it's a staggered start, right? And just like what you were talking about with the population that you work with, it covers the whole building. And I love how you said vectors, like all of these different vectors. You know, what they keep talking about in Providence is like there's these stable pods. But when you're talking about high school kids or middle school kids or kids that have any sort of like secondary extra sort of like services they need, that's not a stable pod. You know, like the speech teacher, the like anybody who has to work with these young people are going to be in and out of these pods. So like, was there a delayed start at all in New York? And what was your last day?
So we're in the schools. I'm on medical accommodation, so I'm home and I'm doing stuff online. I'm doing trainings online. The kids will get orientations at their school on the 16th through the 18th, right? They're supposed to have an orientation to how to use things, and it supposedly help them get used to the online platform and figure out how this whole thing is supposed to get their schedules, et cetera, et cetera. And officially, the school starts where you actually physically show up on the 21st. Now, we already have 10 cases on day 2. And, you know, the Moore Caucus is getting all of these people reaching out to us, and we're trying to verify. But the reality is waiting to the 21st to let it open for the kids. Yet none of our requests for the actual receipts of the paid for, purchased, and delivered and installed MERV 13 filters, because the MERV 7 is nothing, you know, has been done. These construction has not happened. There's no ventilation in the bathroom. That has not been fixed. They claim that they have stopped all of the nail down windows and all this other stuff. That is not true. And you know, the reality is that they don't have lids on the toilet, so it still gets aerosolized. They have some things that, like, a lot of our bathrooms and stuff have not been repaired. The sinks don't work. There's no hot water. There's no way to actually follow through with the basic washing of hands. None of this. And they say that they're gonna have all these stations and they're gonna have all this other stuff. I feel like they agreed to the 21st because it would avoid a strike, because we were threatening a strike. And our union was threatening a strike, and they said, "Oh, we had a little bit of a win." No, it's not little bit of a win. You know, only when it's safe is the hashtag. Only when it's safe, and we won't die for DOE is the other hashtag. So that's the reality. And what people don't want to admit is that once you are healed from COVID, what you end up having is a long-term chronic illness. It impacts you in different ways. My mother had it. My grandmother died of it. I have antibodies. It would have been 3 generations in my family that would have passed. Had I passed it along to any of my kids, I would have infected 5 boroughs and 5 different racial ethnic groups. It's not a joke. But my mother still has things from the headaches and the oxygen deprivation. She still has those symptoms. It has affected her permanently. This is not a joke. And all of the stuff that they say, "Oh, we delayed it." Honey, you could delay it all you want. You didn't buy anything. You know, and when you find out what the truth is, when you speak to an industrial hygienist, somebody who actually does this type of thing in terms of like architectural design, you're supposed to have a minimum of 6 full air exchanges for that to be safe. What they are literally putting us into, because these rooms are not fully air, the exhaust is not working, the windows don't open far enough, there's not enough exit. We're lucky if we get 3. 50 to 78% protection is what they're putting people in, because we do not have the filters, we do not have the air exchange, and they're trying to say very nicely and underneath the radar, they're raising the number of kids that they're going to put in classrooms, claiming, "Oh, our rooms are big enough." And stuff like that, because they don't have enough teachers. They currently do not have enough teachers for the model that they have decided to put, this blended model where they're saying that a kid will have a remote teacher and a kid will have an in-class teacher. That's not going to work.
Can you talk about that model a little bit?
They're releasing all these older teachers and people who are working for the central in the DOE, and they're putting them back in the classroom.
Older teachers.
People who have since retired and haven't taught kids in 10, 15, 20 years are magically going to catch up on what us teachers struggled with.
Exactly.
In the middle of a pandemic.
In the middle of a pandemic, they haven't
Where
done
the elderly are more susceptible to this anyways. And so now you're having older teachers putting themselves at risk in addition to all the other teachers and the kids and the families. Yeah, makes sense.
Can you talk a little bit about the model? So you know, how many students are they saying should be in your classes? And
depending on the square footage, they've said anything from 9, but we're hearing up to 16, depending on the size of the room. Now, if you know anything about the inequities about the buildings in New York City, some of these schools are gorgeous.
Yep, and some of them are old,
and some of them are a rat's nest. Like, to be really honest. So every school is going to be different, but they're telling us on paper from 9 to 16. But what they're also not saying is how people are trying to balance the fact that they have some kids that they have to teach online and some kids in front. So there's a bunch of principals who are harassing teachers, trying to get them to do both roles of the remote teacher and the in-class teacher. And they think that they can live stream teachers to make up the difference, right? Now, this is not what the union had agreed to. This is not what the model said, the live streaming. And if you know anything about kids, they don't like to wake up and they don't want to be sitting there watching someone speak to the air. And teaching in person is not the same as lecturing. We don't lecture our children. How am I going to live stream me doing a lesson, just a mini lesson in the beginning? I can make a video for the kids for that. That would be much slower, much more dedicated to them, that type of thing. But there's a game being played because they did not want to admit that they put the cart before the horse, created this blended model so that they can have some in person, because parents wanted their kids back, right? And the people wanted to work, people wanted their employees back. All of this wanted to happen. We didn't get a stimulus, so they had to try to get some part of the labor force back, right?
Right.
Promising these parents a blended model, but not making it clear and explicit that your child will only be in the building about 2 days out of the week. The other 3 days, they are still remote. Yeah. So the investment should have been in remote learning, period.
Exactly.
Right? And the problem was that they didn't think of how are parents supposed to work only 2 days a week. They also don't have enough childcare slots. They planned for 100, and they told and announced in a press release 100,000 childcare slots. Then later on, with no one's paying attention, 33,000 are left. Those are the only how many they were able to make happen. So the childcare is not there, the infrastructure is not there, and right now we're realizing that without having an actual real plan to prevent people from getting into the schools who are infected, they're just letting teachers go in first as a guinea pig. So now we have 10 different schools, more than 10 cases, and some schools have 2 cases. So the reality is that we're starting to discover, because of the teachers, what's going to happen when the kids come back.
Right. It's like a small scale of what.
Come down for what? Oh, it's likely we'll have a few cases. Well, those few cases are human beings. They have to live for the rest of their life. This is not a joke.
Those few cases are families.
Yeah. The thing is, let one of those 2 cases be your child. You wouldn't be saying that then, you know? And I think that's a great point that you make, you know, when you say like these 2 cases are human beings, and it's like people, especially the people in power and the people who feel like, you know, this doesn't affect them. It's like they don't care because it's not their family. But if it was your child, you would care. And in a moment like this, in the middle of a global pandemic, you need to be treating, I mean, we should always be doing this, but especially now, everybody is your family at this point, because this thing spreads so fast. And these are human lives that we're talking about, you know? And it's literally like they're just going to sacrifice teachers. They're going to sacrifice our students, our kids. And it's going to be poor children and teachers in poor schools, like, you know, all over the Bronx and in other boroughs, because we're the ones that, you know, how many of our kids don't have access to the internet at home? How many of our kids, you know, the parents have to go to work, they're essential workers, they don't have a choice, you know? How many of our kids, you know, if they don't go to school, there's no way that they don't have a computer at home. They don't have what they need to learn, you know, and they have, like you said, they have done nothing. They didn't put the energy and the time and the money into making sure that these alternatives right, were ready for our kids, and instead they just want us all to go back to work and all to go back to school, and who cares if we die, you
It's
know?
a desperation for normalcy. It's
Yeah.
desperation to pretend as if everything is okay.
Yeah.
You know, everything is okay. Let's send the kids back. You know,
Mhm.
it's very unlikely. You know, and this
Mm.
type of condescension is just really disgusting. Anybody who's worked in the Bronx, who's been an activist in the
Mhm.
Bronx, understands that there are underlying inequities that make us much more
Right.
vulnerable. You know,
Right.
one of which is the age of these school buildings.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The age
The
of the school
condition of
buildings,
the
the
buildings. Yeah.
conditions of it, the disinvestment, and the fact that Albany owes city schools $4 billion, was it the last
Mhm.
time? You know, no, not giving us the foundation aid that we won in a lawsuit, by the way.
Mhm.
You know, playing games with this types of stuff and then using money from the CARES Act to plug a budget hole instead of giving that money that was tailored for education. That's what Cuomo did. He took
Mm.
education money and he plugged another hole, right?
Yeah.
And finally, from what I read, our mayor did the same thing, moving
Mhm.
things around. We right now are facing, if Cuomo doesn't give that 20% of our funding that he's withholding, we're
Mhm.
facing about 9,000 layoffs
Wow.
in
Yeah.
the
Wow.
so to me, it makes no sense. This is why they're desperate to get office people who haven't taught in decades to come and now jump in and do whatever they think they're going to be doing with our kids. You know, like this
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense to me. And then because they allow principals, what was it in 2007 or something like that? They allowed principals to manage their own budgets. So what does
Right.
that mean? That means principals have been accessing teachers because they lost funds, right? Because
Mm.
of enrollment or whatever, accessing teachers, and so teachers who are needed in those schools are being thrown into the wind. We're all over the place. And staffing is a hot mess, and they haven't gotten control of this. But supposedly we're going to start on the 21st.
Mm.
Mm. Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, and it's very nice for them to say a lot of the stuff that they say in the press, that they care about children of color,
Mhm.
they care about this and that. And it's great that they can echo the things that the activists had to scream in their face months ago.
Mhm.
Very nice that you can echo that. But you know, the proof is in the pudding, and it's
Mhm.
action, not words, that matter.
Right.
And you know, we've known that these places have been death traps for a long time. You know,
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff that gets ignored. And the reality is that they're just giving the most narrow curriculum to these children that
Mm.
they can, the bare basics, 99-cent package of stuff.
Mhm.
They're not getting electives, they're not getting arts, they're not getting any of
Mhm.
this stuff. They're just going to get the basics, and we're
Mhm.
supposed to hold on. They want to open up the schools so that they can send everybody back to work. But the reality is that once those kids come sick, those kids are not going to let
Yeah.
their parents go to work. Parents are
Yeah.
going to get sick. And the last thing I want to see is a real big surge all over
Mhm.
again.
Yep.
But that's
Yeah.
what the fear is.
That's where we're headed, it seems like, with this whole with the school reopenings. And also people don't realize, but some of the universities, so I teach at CUNY, I teach at LaGuardia, and LaGuardia, like CUNY, we're having remote classes, but you know that some of these universities are having in-person classes, like NYU has in-person classes, so they got students from all over the country coming back to campus, and they're holding in-person classes. Classes, I believe, just started for them last week. And the same, I'm not sure what Columbia is doing, but some of these schools, the universities in the city, they're doing the same thing. And it's just like, how do you not realize? How do the people empowered not? It's like no forethought. Like, okay, you're more concerned with the economy, but what do you think is going to happen? Like you mentioned, when everybody starts getting sick, we're headed for another big surge. The numbers are not going to stay low.
They're not.
Yeah.
We saw what happened, and we were like stunned in horror of
Yeah.
all of these morgue like buses outside of Bronx, Lebanon,
Yeah.
outside of different, and we were stunned in horror, and people were
Hmm.
quarantining, and the only thing people kept saying is, as long as it's not me, as long as
Yeah.
I'm not affected.
Right.
That mentality is still with our elected officials. As long as we
Yeah.
can hold it down, we're fine. But the
Exactly.
reality is they haven't invested in the tracing. They haven't
Yeah.
really, not really. They claim that they have, not really.
That contract tracing program. So in New York, they started this contact tracing program. Um, and from what I hear, it like even the hiring process was a mess, because I know some people that applied to work there, and
Mhm.
it was like they couldn't even hire people correctly, let alone set up the program correctly. So I mean, all these things, you're absolutely right. they're telling us one thing, but the reality is something far different. We are not prepared. They are not prepared, and they don't care. And Errol and I, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, finish it.
We were actually talking about this the last time, like one of the things is that we know the people in power do not care about us or our kids. They don't care about Black and brown people. They don't care about poor people, but we care. And what we were talking about is, what are alternatives? What can we do? Are there things that we can do in our communities? And, I want you to say what you were going to say a second ago before I cut you off. But, think about this question and let us know, are there things that people are talking about? Are there things teachers are talking about, parents? Like, what are the alternatives? But go ahead.
So quickly, when we went to bury my grandmother in Puerto Rico, we went through the airport. We said where we were going to be. They took our temperature. They checked us. We got to the Airbnb, and within a few days, my mother was really, really having a headache. And we went to the hospital. She ended up being hospitalized. These people were very aggressive with me. They were like, we really strongly suggest that you take this test. And I was like, I have to bury my grandmother. I can't be hospitalized right now. I have to bury my grandmother. But they were really aggressive. And I was like, when you give my mother her purse and you give her her phone and I speak to my mother, then I'll consider taking the test. So don't put me in the corner behind a big plastic sheet and, and do this. It was very scary, but they were very serious. You know what I'm saying? My mother spent a week there. She came out and they were calling her on a daily basis. They were asking her to take follow-up tests. Yeah. They had her name down. She wasn't allowed to leave, which is messed up because we live in New York. We're not even Puerto Ricans, like from the island. We're just like from heritage. We don't belong there officially. So we were there to bury my grandmother, and this whole thing fell apart. But let me just tell you, they called, and then they asked my mother for phone number. They called me, and they called my uncle. And the first few days, the cops passed by the Airbnb. Ooh. And the number of times was about 3, my cousin counted. So we were like, this is not an accident. So we felt like we were being watched. She finally got a negative thing. We were able to fly. Yeah. And we got called here in New York City to follow up. And it was by medical professionals who called in. This is Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Doing like contact tracing for New Yorkers who came here.
Yeah.
And my friends who had all of this happening in the schools that were sending stuff, they haven't been contacted by contact tracing yet. Yeah. And we were in the same classroom with the teacher who had to leave immediately after getting a phone call saying she had a positive test.
Oh my God.
And Puerto Rico is doing a better job. What is going on? That's the real thing. That's the contact tracing. But the other part was, what is it that we can do? Honestly, what I'm going to say, some people are going to agree with and not going to agree with. Part of it is we need to look to our own cultural practices and traditions.
Right. Yes.
To change our mindset about trying to go after the Joneses and start remembering how the Cruises used to run their shit.
Yeah.
Now the Joneses want to pay people as tutors and do all this little BS stuff, whereas the Cruises had a long-term historical thing of comadres and compadres, right? We had friends of the family that were close friends and cousins and sisters and brothers. And this is how we shared childcare. This is how we shared all types of ways of doing things. We figured out through systems that we had. If you have a sweet 16 and you're not a rich person, someone is the madrina of the cake. Someone is the padrino of the liquor, whatever it is. And you get a party going with your own people. So here's what I strongly suggest. Get your network together by Zoom, by whatever it is. And the strongest people in your network have to train the other people how to do Zoom, how to do, Google Meets, how to do all this other stuff. Every single one of the people in your circle, in your bubble, in your network, whatever label that people are using for a tight-knit group of people that do not let anybody in, okay? You need to all get tested. And once you find out where you're all at, you can figure this out. You also need to be in agreement with how you act with hygiene. Consistent from family to family. Okay? And only when you have those things, that foundation established, then you can continue to have, little play dates and stuff like that, right? Pool your money and get basic Chromebooks. They're very cheap. Forget sneakers and anything else that is stylish. None of that matters anymore. Cut it out. Everybody needs to have their own little computer that they can work on for school. Cut it out with the things that have nothing to do with nothing. Focus. The iPads that the schools are going to give them headaches. Those things are being controlled outside by the DOE. Only certain apps can be used. Don't come with keyboards for typing, and it causes a lot of stress to the kids. Get those things if you can, right? If you have one family member who doesn't work, okay, or two family who don't work, figure out a way to balance out your needs. One person takes the group of kids this part of the week, and the other one takes them on the other part of the week. If the homes are, different sizes and different comfort levels, figure out how to make it even-handed. Pool your money for food for the kids, cover the lunches, cover the snacks, cover the everything. Use what you need to do, like old school survival stuff.
Right.
And really set it up so that you depend on each other. And you really have to wear masks over your nose. Not hanging from your neck, not hanging from an ear, not trying to look stylish. And it has to be a proper mask, and it has to cover whatever. You wash your hands ridiculously. When you come into the house, take off your shoes at the front door. Do all those hygiene things. Teach your kids to do that, and respect the other homes of your bubble, right? Of your family bubble, comadres and compadres. Be honest about how you guys are going to help each other, and be even-handed. You're going to need each other. You're going to need each other. And those types of old school ways, it's not the same way that, hiring a tutor and getting a nanny. And that's not how we roll. And we're going to have to go back to our indigenous practices of having neighbors that we can trust, and having families that we can trust, and having, being able to balance that out. You also have to figure out how to protect your elderly. And so those old school indigenous practices of visiting the elderly, of making sure there's food and preparing food, this is going to have to be something that we do. My grandmother, I loved her to death, most independent person ever. Had to go to her bodega, had to have her little snacks, had to have her little cakes, and none of which she should have had, but she didn't stay indoors.
Right.
And it was because we didn't give her that. I would have given anything. I would have bought every junkeria food for her if she was still here. I would have bought her a case of Corona myself. I would have stocked her house with every Little Debbie and Stella Doro or whatever she wanted, so that she wouldn't have to leave the house. So, maybe you don't want your grandma to eat certain things. Well, give her a snack that she can like. Make sure she has her needs met. Call her, figure out ways to make sure that she doesn't feel tempted to leave, and that they feel taken care of, that they don't struggle. And that way you won't have to worry about that. And making sure that you are constantly tested as much as possible. Now, the trains is a whole other issue. Transportation is a whole other issue. But if we're talking about people who work and drive and whatever, then your level is going to be different. But wouldn't you feel much more secure if you're depending on each other, you honestly communicated what your needs, what your expectations are, and then you can keep this pod together. So those teachers who are people who are able to stay home, like myself, I can support my nieces in education because I'm home. Right. You can be here, whatever. So that's one of those things about finding out within your network, if you have people who are remote, who can support at least 1 day, 2 days, so that you don't feel overwhelmed, and, stay in communication with the teachers once school starts.
That's beautiful. I have a question.
Sure.
So you said that teachers took a sick out, right, back in March to try to draw attention. Are there actions? Are there like organizing around this school year and what teachers might be able to do to stop some of this, and like how can parents get involved, that kind of thing?
How can students get involved too?
Currently, there are students involved with Teens Take Charge and some other organizing groups. We also have parents who are CEC presidents, who are professors, who are part of our network and our allies. They have their own groups like Press NYC and other groups that are on Twitter. They're spreading the news, keeping people informed, hosting Zoom calls. And what we've been doing is educating the public and spreading the news, because the reality is that silence is death. You know, not knowing that these things are happening, let people go back into the school not thinking, hey, my colleagues are going to give it to me after I survive this whole summer.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a crazy situation. More is going to continue to push for transparency. We heeded the call from our union when we were ready to do a strike.
Can you tell us what MORE is? What does MORE stand for?
MORE is the Movement of Rank and File Educators. It is a caucus, which is like an organizing group within the union.
Yeah.
So our group has the red shirts and white or black logos. MORE, Movement of Rank and File Educators. So we have different people in different districts have been organizing by having phone calls, talking to each other, communicating with each other, sharing documents, that type of thing, just so that we cannot be bamboozled and hoodwinked again. We're also, one group is doing, the Grace Dodge is on fire, doing pickets right before school starts, right before they have to go in. They have been on the news, you know, they have their signs, and the union is trying to tamp down on this, what they fear might be a wildcat thing that might happen. We won't be under their thumb if we continue to push back. But we have our emails, we get our information, we communicate, we go online, we go on television, we do everything we possibly can. We host trainings. Most recently, we had industrial hygienists who actually showed us what the HVAC system looks like and explained everything that we needed to know. And it was like 2+ hours long. Of explanations, and we were there online in a Zoom thing as she was explaining literally why it's going to be an epidemic again, because the whole thing is air exchange, and no one has been talking about that. You hear them talk about things like dampers and all these little small words that have to do a small part of the entire system. So what we needed to do is we needed to get people to understand what these words were. So we hosted a training. And that's what a lot of us are doing right now. We're trying to educate the public and inform them and empower them. We're also pushing through already elected parents on the PEP. We have gone to the panel for educational policy. We have been lobbying the chancellor this whole year since March. We marched in the street. I dressed as a skeleton. I was holding a coffin. I mean, we've done everything to drag people's eyes and attention and make them question things. Because the reality is that everybody's desperate for normalcy. Everybody's desperate for it to be like it was. And so they're starting to relax, wearing the thing on their ear and the mask on their ear, not washing their hands, even though they know they should, not using sanitizer, not carrying any sanitizer with you, not staying home, going all over the damn place and forgetting that you're supposed to maintain your bubble and maintain your distance. You know, people are so desperate that they're not looking at these restaurants and they're not seeing that's not 6 feet. They're not questioning anything, and they're desperate for anything. And I get no one wants to talk about what we need to talk about, which is canceling rent. And we need to prevent another epidemic of homelessness. We need to come up with a voucher system so that landlords can get paid, so they can pay their bills, right? But at the same time, there are people who are very vulnerable and at risk. Our elderly, are poor, are multiple generational families who are under a lot of stress with these high rents. And there needs to be a reckoning. Now that all these people supposedly are disgusted with New York and are living, bye. And lower the rent. And so there's a lot of those things that need to be talked about that are part of the social safety net, because going to get your test and you have to wait a long line when you have to work and you have babies and you have all this other stuff. People are not able to get tested because of all of these obstacles. Remove the obstacles. Remove the obstacles and make this a very safe thing. I mean, it should be school by school, family by family. And it needs to be a situation where it's very strategic and very targeted. Test all the teachers before they go into a school. Test all the kids. Test the families. Make it available in the school before you make them stay there for 8 hours. Okay? It's one thing to be next to a person in a restaurant in the fresh air, right? It's quite another to be staying in one room, because those kids will not be able to move.
Right.
they're not going to have recess. They're not going to have gifts the same way. They're not having music. They're not having chorus. They're not having art. They're not having any of those things. They will stay in one room, sitting in one chair, facing forward, because that's what the CDC guidelines say. And in some of the schools that had enough money, they purchased a big plexiglass thing to be in front of the smart board so the teacher can teach behind a glass.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make any sense. So it would be good for people to start talking about the things that we need to do to relieve the stress on families and relieve the stress in terms of people can't take care of themselves if we don't get a stimulus, and we need another stimulus.
Exactly. We need, and it can't be a one-time $1,200 check. We talking about monthly. We need money every month. Cancel the rents, like you said. Cancel the mortgages.
Yeah.
Why are all bills not canceled right now? This is the thing that was killing me when this shit first started in March, and it's still. I know why they're not doing it is because the people at the top are greedy and don't care, and they're only thinking about money. But you're in the middle of a global pandemic. If there was ever a time to do this, it's right now. Cancel everything. You know?
They should put a moratorium on it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the
Absolutely.
thing is, if everybody got to stay home, this could be over in 2 months.
Exactly.
Right? Like if
exactly.
just,
you know, I mean, there will be people still doing jobs like delivery and stuff like that. People will still be working here and there. But if there was that freedom that you don't have to do it 5 days a week, that you could do it part-time, that you don't have to worry about this, that you can actually, you know, be there for your kids for those 3 days that are really at home learning, then people wouldn't be as stressed out. There are parents who are seriously facing some serious consequences. And it's like my family's health versus my job and keeping a roof over my head.
Right.
It's a very dangerous thing to have that situation. People are under extreme stress.
Yeah.
Under the mental health is going to be a real issue.
Absolutely. And think about it, you know, this system has always offered us really just death or death. You either work yourself to death at your shitty job or you don't work and you starve. And now it's literally giving us the same thing, but like more explicitly, because it's like you go to work and you die from this virus, or you don't go to work and we don't give you anything and you starve to death and you die. So it's like, at this point, I'm just like, what is it going to take? What is it going to take for all of us in this country to just be like, enough, and get in them streets and fuck it up? And I know that, you know, young people have already been doing this, but it's just like, it can't just be the young people. It has to be everyone, because enough already. What more do we have to lose? They're already saying just die. You know?
That's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
But, you know, the problem that we have is the moderates.
Yep.
The moderates who are like, oh, but, you know, don't create any drama. You know, that's the problem. Because this is why Moore has been trying its best to educate people, because people don't really understand how lies come out of these people's mouths and exaggerations on purpose, because they do exactly what Trump did. Trump knew. Knew from February and full on lied to the whole damn nation.
Yeah.
Okay. And he knew all along, and he did it because he didn't want to cause a panic. Our elected officials are doing the same shit that he's doing, not wanting to cause a panic by not telling the truth. And those of us who do tell the truth end up having a Cassandra complex, and no one wants to believe what we say, even though we can see what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
And we look like the crazy radicals. I am far from a crazy radical. I have, you know, the Last Supper in my kitchen. I have a lot of traditional stuff in my home, and I have some conservative feelings. But when it comes to life, as a Christian woman, I have to fight for these people's lives, my students' lives, my community's lives. Thou shalt kill is real.
Yep.
For me, it's real. So I don't care what people call me, and people say that I'm telling people all kinds of stuff, or I'm like whatever, scaring people. You know, fear can be a motivator or can make you shut down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And I've already seen enough death in my life and in my community to realize just like how bad things are. And for me to call for canceling rent, it sounds like some socialist, utopian, commie, crazy, pinko, liberal shit. And people are likely to be like, oh, what's wrong with it? But no, seriously. Like, seriously.
I mean, look at the circumstances. What else can you do given the circumstances? This is my thing, right? Sorry, go ahead, Errol.
I was going to say, it's not like this country can't afford that.
Right. You can do it. You have, and the thing is, like, if you cancel all these things, the only people who are gonna take the hit is the people at the top. They got enough money. They have enough. They'll
But
survive.
they're always able to get vouchers from the government and welfare from the
Exactly.
government. So why don't
Exactly.
they pay us while we give them free rent?
Right. Right.
I mean, you still get paid.
Yeah.
But good.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make any sense. Like to know that people are scrambling and pulling money together because grandma might be evicted, you know, and people are having this reality check. You know, people already were living under extreme stress. And most of the Bronx schools had large numbers of homeless children, and they had put in different categories: those who were in shelters, those who were living doubled up.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, those who are like living with families because their mother is not able to hold it down, so they're living with grandma and grandpa while mom is trying to get their stuff together. So all of these kids went through trauma, right?
Yeah.
And now they're going through even more, and we are not planning to serve these kids right. When we finally get the school running and we actually see these kids in person, the teachers are going to have to deal with the results of these trauma for these kids, and a lot of them are not ready. And
It's
that
very
is
true.
looking at how discipline is going to be handled. And we need counselors, not cops. And there's more cops in the school when there's less kids. Does that make any sense?
I mean, for their plan, it makes sense. This is what they've always wanted. This is what they've been doing, you know? And I feel like this whole thing with this virus, with this pandemic, all it's going to do is take a bad situation and make it worse and give them the excuses that they needed, right, to do things like put more cops in our schools, to put more cops in our neighborhoods, you know, to crack down even harder. And you know, everybody is talking about, oh, the crime rate in New York City is going up, all this stuff is going up. You know what? First of all, you know why it's going up? Because there's no jobs, there's no money, everybody's struggling. What do you think happens when extreme poverty hits and extreme inequality? Because we're living here in these neighborhoods that are falling apart around us, and right over there, over the bridge, you go into the city, and guess what? You're around mass wealth. So when you have extreme inequality, yes, you are going to get a rise in violence and a rise in crime because everybody is struggling, and we see what they have, and we see that we're being forgotten about.
Yeah.
Again, I live in Fordham. I don't know where you're at, but I live in Fordham, and when they, you know, hit Fordham Road and open up all the stores, they have people going on IG Live and Facebook Live showing what was happening. Part of me was like, why are you collecting evidence for the cops?
Right.
That was one. And the second part was, what are they stealing? Diapers.
Yeah.
Medicine.
Yep.
Clothing.
Formula. Clothing. Yeah.
And there were people who grabbed the bag and folded in the bag. And you know what? Later on, people were telling me stuff is on eBay.
Yeah.
Folks are selling stuff from their apartments. Like, I have such and such and such. And this was a small minimum time for people to get their needs met.
Yeah.
And exactly. Little fires, and some people got not, people were stealing weave, like, and all kinds of stuff was happening in ridiculous house. But the ones that I saw was just like, someone is stealing formula.
Yeah.
You know it's gonna go somewhere.
Exactly. So why don't you just keep your mouth shut and stop judging?
You know,
that's the thing. Yeah.
You know, but I knew that there was levels to this. There were those who have no business in the street for whom none of this was a problem. And you see this in the news, all of these so-called fake allies who've been causing problems by stealing stuff from places, and you find out everybody's white, everybody's rich.
That's what happened.
Oregon and other places, and they're not New Yorkers, but they've been going downtown and knocking things. You find these things out, you realize that the story behind the breaking of stuff and the so-called looting is not cut and dry. You know, in the neighborhoods, when the stores that were hit for basic stuff, and they had insurance, got covered, got fixed, looks better in some cases, but people took drugs that they needed, and unfortunately, you know, I mean, the reality is some people won't need them, and some of them did need them. You know, and it was a real situation. People were taking everything that they could. Running out with it in their hands. And that's something about the desire to meet a need, you know, or some people consider it opportunism. I don't know. Up to you.
But to be honest with you, when you're living when you're living in a system that very clearly places property and money and material things over human life, I don't care why you're looting. Loot it, because fuck these people who think like this, and fuck this system who thinks who that says that, you know, human life is not worth a fucking whatever, a building downtown. I don't care about the buildings downtown. And you know, I rode through the streets when all this was happening. I was riding around with my friend. We went in first, we were in the city, and then we came up over here to Fordham and Grand Concourse. And you know, I was so proud of those kids, because I was like, I don't care why you're doing it. I'm glad you're doing it. I'm glad you're doing it, because this system dehumanizes us at every opportunity all the time. So fuck them. So I'm not crying because your fucking storefront got broken. I'm not crying because people stole whatever they stole out of your store, whatever they took, because they steal from us every day. You know,
the whole continent.
So, yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly.
What happens that there's like all of these famous like clothing brands.
Yeah,
got their names mentioned
mm-hmm.
so many times. It was free advertising.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't see them board up their stores or do anything to protect this. But you know what? This was like, okay, this is an in-demand item. Look at my name all over, my corporation's name all over. Someone hit this so-and-so store, and I'm just like, and I got questions. You know, it's really convenient, but you know, neither here nor there. You know, if the person can eBay it, if the person can pay a bill, you know, feed their kid, I can understand the motivation. And right now, without a solution, that's what's going to happen. You know, summer was crazy with the firecrackers, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, these is mad expensive firecrackers.
These were not regular hood firecrackers. These were like industrial grade. It sounded like explosions. I was like, am I in Baghdad right now? Like, what's happening? And yeah, you're like, where are they getting these from?
Suspect. They only caught 2 guys who I guess drove down south and were selling them.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess like they must have gotten them real cheap because no one was having these celebrations or whatever.
Right.
So those 2 guys did not explain how this was happening in every single big city across
exactly.
And then it all started like right in March.
Yeah.
How did anybody know in March? I mean, except for like the CDC and them, like the firework guys knew that there was gonna be
right.
And I don't know about you guys, but like maybe 2 or 3 days last week, it was going again.
Oh my God, really?
Still got fireworks.
Yeah.
Fireworks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lord, man. I mean, there's some states that have the proximity to areas where they have different laws, you know, Pennsylvania, and whether people, you know, traveling back and forth between the different states. And I can totally see it happening when it's hot and stuff like that. But it was really suspicious to me.
It really was. Because it was, like you said, it wasn't just every big city. It was even small cities across this country. It was basically every hood. I feel like every hood in America, was experiencing this at the same time.
It felt like an like what is that called? An op.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
It really did. It really did.
And people got really stressed out, and people who were not used to this type of noise were in shock and all this other stuff. But I remember growing up in the Bronx and M80s being thrown in the summer was a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and so like I was like, okay, that's normal, but this is not normal. Like
this is not. Yeah, this was a different level. Like you always hear fireworks in the summertime, not a problem, but this shit was out of control because this was legit, like explosives. And I was watching them because I live in Hunts Point, and they were doing it right outside my window across the street, and I was watching it, and the size of the fireworks is not like nothing I've ever seen. It was not a normal firework. These things were huge. So, yeah, and you know, some of the conspiracies that were coming out around it, when I read them, I was like, you know, I could see it because this is not normal.
I totally believe it was probably layers of things that were happening when they got those there were firefighters that had confiscated some firecrackers, and so they were blowing off steam by blowing them up in front of their building, but it didn't occur to them to just destroy them. It didn't occur to them to not do it at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, right.
You know, like to me that made no sense. And they were blowing off steam. Fine, whatever. You confiscated these things from some teenagers. Congrats. But you still were disrupting the peace of
Right.
the neighborhood. So my question was, where's your respect for those neighbors that you?
They don't have any.
Yeah, for real.
They don't have any. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you know, people, babies, kids with autism, little
Yeah.
doggies, you know, grandmas. Everybody was like really rattled.
Yeah.
And that's what made me feel like it was an op, like it was on purpose. Like
they're getting us ready for something. That's what it felt like. Like, what are you trying to get us used to? I'm sorry?
I said that it would go so late. Like usually fireworks, it'll be like Saturday night. They go until like maybe 12 and then it's done. But
no, these were 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
You could not sleep.
And it really felt like explosions. Yeah, I don't know.
Like you could feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this summer has been a mess. So let's hope that this fall won't be as big of a mess. I feel like it will be, but let's keep that in prayer.
So we want to thank you so much for being here with us and talking to us about what's going on with the schools and stuff. Did you have any final thoughts, anything that you wanted to add at all?
I would really like to add something about parents calling the schools and being as involved as possible, because we need your eyes on the schools now more than ever. We need you to be super involved. And this is not like a judgment on people who are busy. We need you to watch them.
Yep.
That's what we need. We need you to watch them. We need you to ask questions. And when you drop your kids off, make sure that there's signage and ask if there's hand sanitizer. Ask to see the bathroom. Be nosy and ask, because that keeps people honest. And if teachers have to risk, you know, doing a stick out and doing a strike just to have clean rooms, we need the parents' eyes more than ever. Help us be a watchdog. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. It was so good to talk with you. Thank you for everything. We appreciate it.
Can't wait to see it. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
All right.
That was dope.
That was amazing. Told you she was good.
You didn't even know her.
No, I told you I knew her through other people, but I know her from Facebook, and she's dope on Facebook.
Good.
So.
I mean, she killed it.
Yeah.
She killed it. Little digression at the end.
I mean, I feel like, you know, we had to talk about it because this summer has really been crazy.
Man.
It's been wild. It's been wild. And I feel like this winter is going to be, has the potential to be wilder. But again, like we just talked about, there's alternatives and there's things that we could do. And it's really just about getting involved in your community. Like, now's the time, you know?
Yeah, like we got to keep fighting. You know, if there's actions in your town, make sure you're involved. I love what she said. You know, like if you are a parent or just somebody who cares about your community, be nosy. Like get in those buildings, let people know that it is not okay. Post stuff on Facebook. Like if you're a teacher and you hear this and you want to like come on and like we'll put like a disguise up if you want, like just like you can name names, because like the world needs to hear this stuff. And you know, I think that like things are gonna be hard, but like this is the challenge, you know, and like we're ready and we have to we got to do these things. We got to stick together. We got to support each other. We got to be honest about our needs. We got to reach out to the people who love us and have our backs, and we got to go back to our old ways, you know, because all of our cultures can't, and we don't even have to go that far back. I mean, like for me growing up right here in Providence, this is what we did, you know, like out for each other, you know, and we gotta sometimes take that risk and talk to a neighbor and kind of put yourself out there in that way and see what we can do for each other, because we need each other, and that's how we're gonna get through this, and we are going to get through this, you know.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. And it's like what we were saying in the last podcast, the last episode, where it was like, you know, having to rely on each other, it's what makes you, like, when you have to rely on someone, you can't see them as anything but a human being.
Yeah.
You can't dehumanize someone, and it makes it a lot harder to do that. Which is what this system is always wanting us to do, is dehumanize each other the way it dehumanizes us. And we do it. you know,
Mm.
and we do it even sometimes without realizing it. But when you have to rely on that person, can't do that anymore. And so as much as this virus is a horrible thing and many people have died and families have struggled and people have suffered, it also gives us an opportunity, I think, to reclaim that humanity that has been taken.
Yeah, I mean, and it sucks that like it is coming through this tragedy, but
Mm-hmm.
it, I feel like that this is what happens during tragedy because
Right.
because the system is so good at one making us all invisible, but not
Mm-hmm.
only are we invisible to them, we're invisible to
Mm-hmm.
each other. This is
Right.
one of those times when like, no, we see you, we
Yeah.
see each other's pain, we see each other's suffering, and we have to do something about it. We can't just let
Mm-hmm.
it continue to be invisible.
Right.
And we got a plan, like how do we keep each other safe and
Mm-hmm.
fed and warm and
Yeah.
housed over this winter.
Right.
And the thing is, like, we can never go back. And the thing is,
Yeah.
like, I don't want to go back,
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we even want to go back to what it was? No.
and so
Yeah.
like we have to like create this new world because the old
Right.
one's gone and the old one
Right.
wasn't for us anyway, right?
Yep.
But that was beautiful. It was dope to hear a teacher
Mm-hmm.
feeling that passionately about her work and about what winning actually looks like and feels like. Uh,
Yeah.
on our next episode or the second half of this episode, we're going to talk
Mm-hmm.
to some Providence teachers. Um, that was a lot.
Yeah. But it was really good to to hear her.
Mm-hmm.
Um and to really hear somebody who's like working in these schools say that like everything they're telling you is a lie, because I suspected it and I think many of us suspect it. But you feel crazy saying it. But we can't forget that like they will lie to us. They've been lying to us. Like this is not new.
Like being in the schools here in Providence,
Mm-hmm.
it just like I have no words sometimes because
Yeah.
it's so terrible. Like the
Mm-hmm.
just like the state that the buildings are in, how understaffed every single part of like the school structure is, from
Mm-hmm.
the people making lunch for kids to the custodians to
Mm-hmm.
the nurse, if you have a nurse in your building, to like
Yeah.
the art department, the science department, like any kind of teachers. It's just and they had since March 13th
Mm-hmm.
to look at what, because most schools went distance learning, right? Most
Mm-hmm.
communities did that. You got all of that data. Schools love
Yeah.
data. School
Yep.
departments love data. What you doing with that data? You didn't
Mm-hmm.
look at that. You didn't see what times were working for young people. When did
Mm-hmm.
kids actually show up? What were their grades like?
Mm-hmm.
Because like we know that, and so as all of this is happening, like the big forecast was that after Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
everything was gonna have to lock down again anyway,
Yeah.
right? So like,
Right.
are they trying to get people ready for that? Are they?
Mm-hmm.
But like, yo, we gotta be ready. You know,
Yep.
yo, so Bestie Hive, like we need you to like be connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And Z and be posting these videos on Facebook. We need to hear from you. Uh,
Yeah. Please give us
we're gonna,
feedback.
yeah, and we're gonna make like an email so you all can email us.
Mm-hmm.
You could actually go on like Apple, because we're on Apple. We're big time out here. I guess you could do this on Spotify. I'm too cheap to have a Spotify account. Don't judge me.
I have a Spotify. I
And it's
didn't
probably free.
realize
Do
that
you
I
have a
could
free
get.
account?
I think I pay for it.
Can I ask you a
I think,
question?
yeah.
Do you subscribe to our podcast?
Okay, I'm a grandma, so I don't know how to do that.
Guys,
I don't know how.
you
I
hear
gotta
her? Do you hear her?
give me directions. Give me directions,
You hit
sir.
the button. You know how I keep sending you the link that says Spotify? You go on and you hit subscribe.
All
And
right,
you
I'm gonna do
subscribe.
that.
And
All
then we
right.
have one more subscriber.
Okay, I'm gonna work on it.
But yo, this was dope.
It was.
we had our first interview.
Mhm.
So everybody who's watching, thank you for watching and stuff. Like we try to. One of us came on the screen just fly.
Which
Right?
one would that be?
Well, it wasn't the one wearing the yellow T-shirt and had the hair nappy. So I was like, yo, I guess I gotta go put product in my hair.
Listen, if I'm gonna be on camera, I have to look right.
Wildin'.
That's how it is.
So yeah, this will be our first like real video on YouTube.
Oh my God, I'm scared.
Yeah, and hopefully I will be able to edit this so that we can take the audio and throw that onto to our podcast situation. But there'll definitely be a link to the YouTube, so you can see just how much work each of us put into being on camera for this. But is there anything else you want to talk about before we go?
No, I think that's it. This was a great conversation. We're going to continue this conversation, hopefully with more teachers, more educators. If you are an educator and you would like to come on and talk about what's going on in your city, if you're not in Providence, if you're not in New York, if you're somewhere else, please hit us up.
Absolutely.
We are more than, willing to have other people on. We want to show that like this issue is not in one city alone, is across this country. Something is seriously wrong with the way that this country is run. We already know that, and so let's begin to highlight some of the ways that shit is fucked up.
And also, Bestie Cast, like as we've been thinking about why we're making this podcast, part of it is it's like this conversation that we're having around humanity, right? And just and like how do we come together in times like this? And how do we create this world that we deserve to be living in, right? So like there's a lot of doom and gloom happening right now, but like underneath that there's gotta be hope, right? We gotta be planning for what this next world looks like. If you are a person who is a part of something like that, if you have some beautiful part of this new world that you want to come on and share, we're down for that too. And definitely educators from across the country. It'd be dope to hear what people are doing on the West Coast and down south, around these things.
Definitely.
And ways that young people and families and communities can get up and start fighting. So yeah, Bestie Cast, let us know. We're Bestie Cast. Bestie Hive.
Bestie Hive.
Yes. The only hive.
Oh my God. I want just kidding, Beehive. Just kidding.
Yo, why do I do this?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like you want to be attacked on Twitter. Makes no sense.
I don't really use my Twitter, so.
Oh, so you have no fear.
Oh, I have a lot of fear. I just don't.
All right.
Thank you so much, Izzy. This was
thank you guys. It was so good. Thank you.